Welcome to the King's 84 Chess Tournament, co-sponsored by the stockbroking firm of Phillips & Drew and the GLC. Frank Leonard of Phillips & Drew explains how their involvement began.
It really all started in 1978 when the British Chess Federation informed me, an enthusiastic amateur, that they had in the GLC a potential sponsor for an international chess tournament. This idea greatly appealed to me personally, and my partners were kind enough to support that idea by providing the sponsorship funds to create the first Phillips & Drew King's chess tournament in 1980. Our aim was to help British chess as much as possible in sponsoring this event, and I think allowing 5 British players the opportunity to play against world-class opposition was, we thought, one way of doing it. There was, of course, the subsidiary Knights tournament, which gave younger, aspiring international masters the opportunity to compete in a truly international event of a slightly lower category. This year's tournament promises even more than both 1980 and 1982, because we have at the chessboard Viktor Korchnoi and Anatoly Karpov. For the first time in an invitation tournament since Viktor left the Soviet Union. They have, of course, played many times in matches in the World Championship Series against one another, but this is a first and achieves our aim of bringing the very best chess players in the world into competition with our leading British Grandmasters. The 2 previous events had a truly electrifying atmosphere, and I hope the 1984 video film of the tournament will recapture the flavour and tensions of the past and allow those of you unable to come to London the opportunity to savour it for yourselves.
The tournament is being held in the GLC headquarters in the heart of London, and this magnificent building with its superb conference room is a fitting scene for this historic event. Ray Keane, himself a Grandmaster, will be commenting on the play, and here he assesses the chances of the players involved.
Well, Raymond, the organisers have assembled here in London the strongest tournament ever held in Britain. What do you think is going to happen?
It's a very interesting question, because the world champion, Karpov, has been in somewhat shaky form recently. He's been a very, very good world champion. He's won more first prizes than any other world champion. But of late, he's been tending to tie for first place in tournaments. He's not been winning many games with black. He relies on winning a few with white, picking off the weaker players, and coasting home to victory, because he very, very rarely makes any kind of tangible error. And as you know, later in the year, he's playing a world championship match with Garry Kasparov, who's really a very ferocious, man-eating player. And it looks as if Karpov is coasting and Kasparov is devouring. And really, Karpov has to prove himself in this tournament. He really has to make a very, very good result to maintain his confidence and his momentum before he meets this young challenger. So I think this tournament is really going to be a big test of the world champion. I think that the game between Karpov and Korchnoi in round 8, where Karpov has white, is going to be the needle match. He's going to want to beat Korchnoi very, very heavily and prove that he can do it just as well as Kasparov can.
What about the other players in the tournament? We have a 24-year-old Sarawan from America who beat Karpov here 2 years ago, and many consider him to be one of the new futures.
Right. Well, the trouble with Sarawan is that his international rating has gone down recently. A couple of years ago he was playing at world-class level, but in the last year his rating has sunk by about 100 points. And I really don't see Sarawan making a big impact on this tournament.
And what about the British players?
Well, the ones I think are most likely to succeed are Tony Miles and John Nunn. Probably you know that later in the year there's planned to be a second Russia against the rest of the world match, and both of these players are in contention with the rest of the world team. And I think these are the 2 who will make the greatest impact of the English players. I don't think that John Spielman or John Messel are really have enough experience at this level. And Murray Chandler, who's emigrated to England from New Zealand, is really totally inexperienced in superclass tournaments, and I think that he'll be hard put to avoid last place.
The presence here in London of Karpov and Korchnoi has taken the limelight well away from the other Russian players who are playing here. And there's also Polygaevsky and Viganyan. Do you think either of them could do very well?
I can't see either of them winning the tournament. Vaganyan has an extremely high rating. I think he's third, fourth or fifth on the international rating list, but he also has very little experience in a tournament of this strength, and I can't really see him making a mark on players of this caliber. Polygaevsky has been in the candidates many times, and he's recognised the world over as one of the very best players, but he's got rather a technical style, and I just don't think he'll win enough games to make a play for first prize.
Let's now take a look at the most interesting games from the early rounds. Eugenio Torre from the Philippines enjoys the distinction of being the first ever Asian Grandmaster, and in 1982 he caused something of a stir by reaching the last 8 of the World Championship Candidates series. But in the first round here he came under pressure, and his opponent Chandler now broke through with a knight sacrifice. Black had to take it, and after e takes f6 had cleared the e-file, he was able to take the rook with check. But after white had moved his king, he was threatening mate at g7, so black had to advance his g-pawn. Now the white queen checked at c8, forcing the king to h7. And then it closed in at f8, again threatening to mate at g7, this time from the rear. Black moved his king forward, hoping to escape via h5, but g4 sealed this last exit, and Torre resigned, since king takes f6 only delays the inevitable mate by a couple of moves. Rook f5 check, queen takes f7 check, rook d5. The top pairing of the first round was that between the joint winners of the 1982 Phillips and Drew tournament, Andersson and Karpov. Ulf Andersson from Sweden, currently rated 5th in the world, is noted for his subtle strategy and superb endgame technique. He normally loses very few games, and with white against Karpov, a draw is a highly probable result. And that is the way the game seems to be heading, as we join it on move 22, since white's latent pressure on the d-file can easily be neutralised. But suddenly, Karpov played king f8. This allows white the possibility of knight b4, forcing the retreat of the rook and thus winning the d-pawn, after which black's position collapses, not the sort of mistake you'd expect from a world champion. Unfortunately for Andersson, he didn't expect it either, for instead of the obvious knight move, he played g4, and after bishop e7, guarding the d-pawn, the game was very shortly agreed drawn. A curious incident, which serves to remind us that Grandmasters are, after all, only human. Although Lev Polygaevsky had been one of the world's leading players for over 2 decades, this is, amazingly, the Russian Grandmaster's first tournament in England. A hard-working player with an original style, he has 3 times been a candidate for the World Championship. He had an opportunity to display his attacking skill in round 3, when his opponent, Torre, was let down by his sense of danger. Instead of opposing bishops by bishop g6, Torre exchanged, and then retreated his knight, evidently with the intention of attacking the d-pawn by knight c6. But this left his king dangerously short of defenders, which Polygaevsky exploited by sacrificing his bishop. Black had to take it. The queen checked, forcing the king back, and then the rook swung across to g3. To parry the threats against g7, black advanced his g-pawn, but now white smashed through with a further sacrifice. Rook takes g6 check, f takes g6, queen takes g6 check. It is clear that he can force a draw by perpetual check, but has he anything more? Polygaevsky provided the answer to this several checks later, during which he had picked up the e-pawn. Here he played the key move, queen h5 check, allowing his bishop to come in. Black's only defence was to retreat his bishop, but after checking, White exchanged, checked again, and then brought up his last reserves with Rook A3, whereupon Black resigned. Note how White's second rook also comes into the attack along this third rank. Black is quite helpless, as is seen in a sample variation where he tries running away with his king. Rook F3 check, King E7, Queen G7 check, King E6, Rook takes F8, and it is all over. At the closing ceremony nearly 2 weeks later, for this fine sacrificial attack, Lev Pologaevsky was awarded the Brilliancy Prize. Not so long ago, the Dutch Grandmaster Jan Timman was rated number 2 in the world. Recently his form has been patchy, and he's slipped down the rankings, but on his day he's capable of beating anyone, including Karpov. By an original, although dubious opening manoeuvre, Timman won a pawn, but allowed his king to be trapped in the centre of the board. As we join the game at move 20, we see that White's extra pawn, yes, that is a white pawn at A7, is actually providing a shelter for the black king, whereas White's king is completely exposed to the crossfire of the black pieces. Karpov demolished his opponent's position with a series of energetic strokes, beginning with D5, Queen E3, G5, Bishop takes G5, Bishop B4 check. This was the point of D5. The white queen is no longer guarding this square. King F2, Rook H F8 check, King G2. Blocking the F file by Bishop F4 is no better, since Black replies, Rook takes E5, Queen D4, Rook takes F4 check, G takes F4, Rook E2 check, with mate to follow very soon. In the game itself, there was an equally drastic finish. Rook takes E5, diverting the white queen. Queen takes E5, Queen F3 check, King H2, Queen F2 check, and White resigned, since King H3 is met by Bishop C8 check, G4, Rook F3 check, mating. After the first 3 rounds, the leaders are Karpov and Pologaevsky on 2.5 points, and close on their heels are Chandler and Ribley with 2 points. Murray Chandler has made a good start, but the other 4 English men are finding the going rather heavier. After 3 rounds, they have yet to score a single win, but they're all tough, uncompromising players and can be expected to battle hard, especially when paired against each other. Let's take a look at the round 4 game between Mestel and Miles. 27-year-old John Mestel is the only amateur in the tournament, combining his chess with a career in mathematics. But this hasn't stopped him producing some, at times, outstanding results, and he is in fact the reigning British champion. Miles's opening in this game can, at best, be described as experimental, and as we join play after Black's 20th move, we can see that determined play by Mestel has ripped open Black's king's side. He now found an elegant way to bring his queen into the attack, by playing knight c8. If now queen c7, Mestel was planning the brilliant rook d7, rook takes d7, queen e8 check, forcing mate very quickly after king g7, rook g1 check, king f6, and now queen e6 is mate. So black took the knight, but now white checked, and then captured the black knight. Black exchanged bishops, and then played his queen to c8, hoping that the attack on white's rook would persuade him to exchange queens. But Mestel ignored this and took the black bishop. If black goes ahead and takes the rook, he runs into rook g1, threatening mate, when queen d7, say, is met by knight e5, queen c7, knight g6 check, king g8, knight takes f8, discovered check, with an easy win. So instead Miles took the c-pawn with check, but this left him a knight down with a hopeless position, and a few moves later Mestel finished things off neatly with a queen sacrifice. Queen e5 check, when rook takes e5 allows a forced mate by rook d8 check. We asked Viktor Korchnoi to tell us what he thought his chances were in the tournament.
I must say I've played a lot in this year. I've played already 4 tournaments, and, well, not badly, but I feel that I'm running out of my energy. And also, well, every Grandmaster has to have, theoretical preparation for each tournament, and I feel I'm running out of my theoretical novelties, which I prepared some time ago. And because of that, I don't rate my chances too high. And when I'm looking what's how the tournament is going on, I must say I prefer to be a spectator rather than a player, because they're playing really interesting chess, fighting, and almost in each game there are interesting ideas, clash of will, and this is very interesting to watch.
Will you be playing a lot of tournaments now in the future?
I hope. No, this year was a peculiar one. I've played too much, I must say, and normally I don't think I have to play more than, say, 90 games a year, but in 4 months I played about 60 already.
This is the first tournament that you're playing in with a number of Soviet players. Are you pleased that the chess boycott is now lifted?
No, this is not the first tournament. I've played already in Vacancy and Yugoslavia with them. And, well, it's interesting, of course. I don't know. Well, it happened because of my goodwill to play the match with Kasparov. Finally, it happened that the Soviets also made some conciliatory steps. And of course, for me, it is much more interesting than to play to play in the tournament of the second and third grade. And, well, I would say that my personal relationship with Soviet players is still cool, but maybe it will be improved with time.
As expected, Karpov and Pologoyevsky drew with each other in round 4, which allowed Chandler to join them in the lead by scoring his 3rd win, this time against the normally invincible Anderson. By defeating Vaganian, another player to move into contention was Sierrawan, who in round 5 faced Korchnoi with the black pieces. Yasser Seirawan was the leading player in the United States until last year, when a series of disappointing results sent him tumbling down the rating list. Since he's only 24, it's hard to imagine that this is anything other than a temporary setback, and happy memories of his fine performance here 2 years ago may well spark off a change in form. And there's an added feature to this game. In the 1981 World Championship match, Seirawan was Korchnoi's second, so the two players should be pretty familiar with each other's styles and tastes. But Korchnoi had one of those off days that every player suffers sooner or later. A dubious opening gambit, followed by an incorrect capture in the middle game, left him hopelessly placed, and this was the situation as Seirawan moved in for the kill. He played h4, threatening simply to exchange on g3, and then deliver mate down the h-file. White offered the exchange of queens, but for the moment Black avoided it. White now took the h-pawn. Black captured with his rook. The queens were exchanged, and White moved his king out of check. Seirawan now settled matters with a pleasing little combination. Knight takes d5. If White takes this knight, Black plays king f7, and meets king h3 with f5, defending the rook and delivering mate next move with rook h8. White took the b-pawn in the vain hope of diverting Black's rook, but Seirawan simply ignored this, played his king to d7, and met king h3 with f5, whereupon Korchnoi resigned. If he takes the pawn, Black defends his rook with knight f6, and again gives mate next move by rook h8. So, Seirawan moved up to 3.5 points, just half a point behind the leaders, Chandler, Karpov and Pologaevsky, who all won 2 and were setting a really cracking pace. Round 6 saw Karpov crush Tony Miles, while Pologaevsky kept up with his compatriot by steadily outplaying Anderson. When did the super-solid Swede last lose 3 games in a row? Chandler had a wild, topsy-turvy battle with Timman, which ended in a draw after both sides might have won. And so, on to round 7, where the game we will feature is between 2 of the English players who have yet to shine in this tournament, Miles and Nunn. Back in 1976, Tony Miles led the new English wave by becoming this country's first Grandmaster. John Nunn, who was also 29, achieved his GM title 2 years later. Then last year, they simultaneously broke into the Super Grandmaster class by surmounting the 2,600 rating barrier. Miles's greatest asset is his fierce will to win, while Nunn is noted for his sharp attacking style. But in the game here, it was Miles who took the opportunity to display his attacking skill. Nunn played a couple of dubious moves in his favourite King's Indian defence, and was soon forced to give up a bishop. Even so, he gained 2 pawns for it, and White had to act decisively before his opponent could coordinate his forces. So, to force open the h-file, Miles gave back his extra piece by knight g3. Black had no choice. He had to take the knight. But his king was then subjected to a regular battering by all the white pieces. First, the queen. The queen again. Then the rook. The knight. The bishop. The bishop again. And then again the knight. Now rook takes c7, allows mate on the move by d5, while after queen takes c7, d5 check, king e7, rook takes f7 check, king takes f7, Queen h7 check. White wins the black queen. So black moved his king, but he didn't survive for long. White took the rook with check, checked with his queen, and then brought his queen's rook into play by castling queenside. Black took the d-pawn, but rook h1 sealed his king's fate and forced his resignation. The tournament is drawing large audiences, and some are taking advantage of the earphone commentary provided. Others choose to work out the chess games on their own travelling boards. While scattered all around the tournament area are computer TV monitors giving the position and moves of the main match of the day. Most people, however, prefer to sit and watch the moves on the display boards and just absorb the tension of the battles being fought.
The GLC is enormously happy to be host to the King's Tournament and indeed to be its co-sponsor. The Greater London Council does an enormous amount, we like to think, for sport, for arts, for indeed recreation in general. Chess only figures very occasionally in our programme, and mostly, I must say, through the King's Tournament itself. But because we like to think that we're providing an enormous scope of activities, not only arts and sports, and of course all the parks of London, but indeed pastimes, games, everything that the human spirit is refreshed by, it's very exciting to be able to include chess amongst the things that we do. And I must say that the spectacle of the great masters bent over the chessboards in the middle of County Hall is something which I like very much indeed. County Hall doesn't normally have quite such glamorous or exciting things happening inside it. So for me, it's a great thrill to see the great chess tournaments of the world suddenly figuring in our lives at County Hall.
Just to prove that chess grandmasters are, after all, human, they took on the mighty GLC All-Stars at Craven Cottage before a massive crowd. The chessmaster's winger beats one man, then another, and as he races into the goal area, he's scythed down. It's a penalty. But Timon stubs his toe taking the kick. And the All-Stars hammer home a goal to take the lead. Ridley was playing his usual solid defensive game. And Chandler blasts it past the post. This was not destined to be Jan Timman's day, as he later broke a bone in his foot. The chessmasters sweep through to score. Late in the second half, GLC scored twice to win the match. We asked Jan Timman to tell us about the injury he sustained during the football match and what effect it was having on his play.
Well, I collided with somebody during the match. It was towards the end. And then I fell in a very unfortunate way, and I twisted my ankle, and turned out to be the bone was cracked. So this, of course, has influence on my play. I mean, I try to play rather carefully in general, not to take many risks. And I think that I cannot put as much energy as I would want to my play.
So it has been affecting you?
Yes.
We also asked how the Phillips and Drew Kings tournament compared with others which he had played in this year.
Well, I think this year, this might be the most interesting tournament of the year. So far it has already proven that it is like that.
And we also asked him how he was personally doing in the event, and was he happy with his own performance up to the present time.
Oh, I'm not satisfied. No, I haven't played so well. I cannot find good form. I don't know whether this is related to my leg, but even before, I lost to Karpov in a very bad way.
Let's now return to the serious business at County Hall, where after 7 rounds we see that the 4 leading players have broken away from the rest of the field. It is Saturday the 5th of May, round 8, and the long-awaited Karpov-Korchnoi clash. The playing hall is packed to capacity well before the start, and as 1:15 approaches, the tension among the spectators begins to mount. The press are out in force, and Karpov arrives in good time to a volley of electronic flashes. He fills in the details on his score sheet, then his clock is started, and he makes his opening move, knight f3. This is already something of a surprise, since in the 1981 World Championship match in Merano, Karpov only once deviated from his favourite e4. But where is Korchnoi? While we're waiting, we have a chance to tell you something about his formidable opponent. Anatoly Karpov has been champion of the world since 1975, when Bobby Fischer declined to defend his title against him. As if to answer criticisms that he gained the title by default, Karpov then embarked on a series of unprecedented tournament successes, and he is without doubt the most successful active champion in the history of chess. In 1978, and again in 1981, he successfully defended his title against his opponent in the present game, and in view of their previously acrimonious relations, the first question to be resolved is, will they shake hands? Korchnoi arrives at last, a few minutes late. He's annoyed at having got lost in the maze of County Hall corridors. Karpov returns to the board and... Still ranked equal 3rd in the world at the age of 53, Viktor Korchnoi would be a splendid advertisement for the resilience of Soviet players born before the war, were it not for one thing. Always a rebel, he finally left the Soviet Union in 1976. Recently, he seems to have mellowed, and with the Russians having lifted their boycott on him, it's to be hoped that relations with them will become less cool. But such thoughts are pushed to one side as the 2 Grandmasters confidently make their opening moves. The game transposes into a Grunfeld defence, an opening which has long been a favourite with Korchnoi. But it's hard to recall Karpov having much experience with it. What has he got up his sleeve? He in fact chooses a solid line, which allows black little scope for counterplay, and, rather than sit back passively, Korchnoi makes an aggressive, probably over-aggressive, kingside pawn advance. And in the position after White's 20th move, we can see the result of this. The advance of the f and g pawns has merely weakened them, given White a potential outpost at f4, and left the black king with insufficient pawn protection. As we rejoin the game on move 30, we see that Karpov has made significant progress by establishing his knight on that outpost, and to counter the threat of rook e8 check, black moved his rook to g8. If he takes the c-pawn, white plays rook e8 check, rook takes e8, queen takes e8 check, when king g7 loses to knight e6 check, king f6, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, queen h8 check, skewering the black queen. While if black blocks off the check with his queen, white plays queen d7, and with his pieces so dominant, he can...
Well, the tournament's been quite a sharp tournament. With so many strong players, you can lose quite suddenly and win quite suddenly. I started off well, I finished kind of badly. But overall, I was kind of happy with the result.
The tournament's over, the tournament hall is deserted, and the result has been a tremendous triumph for Anatoly Karpov, the world champion. He won the tournament by a clear point, ahead of, surprise, surprise, Murray Chandler and Lev Polygaevsky. So the tournament's been a great success for two people, Karpov and Chandler. But can Karpov really be so happy with his result? He was steaming ahead to a fantastic performance earlier in the event, but towards the end he slackened. He drew with Ribley and Nunn in a rather let-down fashion, and he also lost to Eugene Torre, whose performance here is one of the weakest in the tournament. And although Karpov can be happy on paper with his result, I think that he would have preferred to win by perhaps 2 points and thus boost his confidence for the coming match with Kasparov. A great result for Karpov, but this letdown towards the end maybe indicates that he's going to have more problems with Kasparov than he hoped.